Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to My First Business, the podcast. I'm your host, Naeem Pervez, and I'm a relatively new and clueless business owner and wanted to talk to entrepreneurs to help guide me and inspire me and help me to understand the best way to grow my business. So what mistakes to avoid, how to overcome common challenges, and how to identify opportunities. And that's why I created the show for you. So if you're thinking of going out on your own or running a new business or an old one, I don't care. I'm not an ageist. I bring on guests from all sorts of industries and they're full of wisdom that you'll chew right up. Each conversation is like having a conversation with a mentor that you never had. My guest today is Shivaun Gyan. Am I saying that right?
Yep.
A Caribbean-born, Dubai-based sales coach and trainer and consultant, he relishes guiding small and medium-sized business owners to the next level of success, typically resulting in them doubling or tripling, sometimes quadrupling their turnover. As a former Big Four director, startup CFO, and COO with work experience in over 20 countries, Shivaun offers a unique perspective on business. Whether you attend one of his live meetups or one-on-one coaching sessions, you'll find his warmth, charisma, and passion for what he does absolutely refreshing and invigorating, and I'm saying this from experience. He's using his expertise to build others up. That's what Shivaun is known for. That's his way of paying forward. Shivaun, welcome.
Wow, that's quite the introduction. Thank you.
That is. Yeah, I'm impressed already. I think we can wrap up right here.
Yeah, I think my job is done. I'll see you.
You're done. I hope you guys enjoyed that. But you know what? We're going to jump into a lot of business-related conversations, but I have a funny story to bring up. A little birdie told me something once.
Oh my God.
I told you you're not ready for this. So there was this one time, and I want you to paint the picture for me afterward. There was this one time where you're invited to speak to a group of South Indian entrepreneurs that you thought were going to be these hard-charging entrepreneurs, and you prepared well for them, and you get there, and you get a group of mompreneurs. Can you tell us about that time?
Yeah, that time was just about a month ago, actually. So I'm trying to figure out which birdie would have told you that.
I don't share my sources.
Yeah, you know what? One of the things I hadn't done, so I've held my own events and I have my own events all the time. But it was one of the first times for this year that I'd been invited as a guest speaker to an entrepreneurial event, and I was, quite chuffed at it. And I showed up, and it was a room of moms, and it was not what I expected. I had my laptop ready with my presentation on how to sell in business or how to win. I can't remember what the name of the presentation was, and I just got in front of the room and realized there was no projector, no screen, no outlets anywhere so I could plug in my laptop. And so I looked at the audience and I pretty much said, wow, I don't think these people are ready for what I was, trying to prepare to speak about. And so I saw a little arts and craft section in the corner of the venue. And I walked up, I took an easel and pretty much a canvas and turned it back to front. And it was about 5 by 5. And got a marker, and it was so small I couldn't even read it. So I said, you know what, forget about this. And I just left it, and I walked in front of the group. I took a look at everybody. They looked at me wondering, what is going on here? Who is this guy, and why does he look lost? And I just took a breath, and I started a presentation on getting yourself in the right mindset for sales. And I made up an entire 45-minute speech on the spot, giving nuggets along the way, but not knowing what those nuggets were until I was just about to say them. And you know what? Got a standing ovation, got some new clients out of it. And yeah, some people, I've been invited to a second event. So I guess I did all right.
I think that would count as a success. So you completely reworked what you were going to say. So.
Not reworked. I just gave a completely different speech about something else.
Yeah.
About having a selling mindset, because I kind of realized on the spot that a lot of these ladies were either thinking about a business or hadn't started a business. I could see some power suits in the room, so I knew there were a few who had established. Some had their babies with them. And so I was like, oh, you know what? This is quite a diverse crowd. What can I say that's universally appealing to entrepreneurs who want to be entrepreneurs or just starting out, and those who are in business for a while? And my go-to whenever I coach my clients, it's all about having a good mindset for sales. And so, yeah, that's where I went to.
I'm going to deep dive into that in a bit, but I want to give people a bit more context about who you are and your journey so far, including being a radio DJ, a voiceover artist, reading the nightly news. Can you give us a brief history of all the different suits and masks that you worn throughout your life so people know? Like, the fascinating thing about you for me is like you're such a colorful character and there's so much to share. How would you describe your journey to where you are right now?
Do you know what? I think my journey has a lot to do with where I come from. And, you know, for those of you who can't pick it up yet, I am Trinidadian. And for those of you who don't know what that means, it means I'm from Trinidad and Tobago, which is an island nation in the South Caribbean. And yep, I made it all the way to Dubai. Yay, mom, I made it. And so my first job was actually, my first revenue making venture was when I was 11 years old. And I decided that I wanted to make brownies. And I went into the kitchen, I made some brownies, and I really love brownies. So instead of taking like 3 brownies, I took the entire thing in an ice cream container that I packed, and I went to school with it. And during break time, I pulled it out, not really intending to share with anybody. And then I gave it to my desk mate, and I was like, oh, do you know what? You want another one? That's 25 cents. And then the other one was like, yeah, 25 cents for you. And you know what? Then I had people lining up, willing to buy my entire container of brownies for 25 cents a piece. Now I'm very old, so that was worth a lot of money when I was 10 years old or 11 years old. And so I realized that I could just make money like that. And then I started baking brownies every 2 days. And my mom and dad would say, wow, he's really into brownies. But they had no idea that I was actually carrying on a business until they got called into the cafeteria by the cafeteria owner, because I was competing with him for his dessert cakes they weren't selling. So that was my first business venture. And yeah, you know what? That's what kicked it off. I had a car washing little business in the neighborhood. I used to draw. I could draw. So I used to draw on people's, you know, I don't know if when you went to school this was a thing, but when you had school books, we would paper them in brown paper to keep them out. So I used to doodle, and I was good at it. And then my desk mate was like, could you do that for me? I was like, yeah, you know what? This is after the brownie thing. So this was like 50 cents, right? So I was just doodling over everybody, and they would pass their books, and I would make money during class just drawing designs on people's papered textbooks.
It's like cover art for albums.
pretty much, right? This is way before Canva, all right? So yeah, I had a lot of those things. I worked in a bookstore during summer. I was a grocery shelf packer. I worked in the meat department. I worked as a cashier. I worked as a visual merchandiser when I was like 14 and 15 years old, right? So I was earning money from pretty young. And I really loved, because I could actually sponsor myself to do stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And so I always had it in me. I got my first real job out of school because I skipped a year of high school, because back then I was sort of a good performer. And I skipped a year of school. So I finished high school, A-levels, at 16 years old. Advanced levels is like the upper side of high school. And so I got a scholarship with Ernst & Young. And they had to find out from the Ministry of Labor if it was legal to hire me. So I had to wait till I turned 17 for them to hire me as an intern. And that was kind of really the start of my kind of corporate career. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then I worked for my father's business. My father ran a custom brokerage business. So I left Ernst & Young, took all my learnings there and put it into his business. I started consulting my dad.
What was his business?
System. He was a customs broker.
Okay.
And so I started putting in systems, accounting, creating reports, job sheets, all this sort of stuff at like 18 years old into his company. And and then in parallel, I'd always been in radio, because my mom was one of the first radio DJs in Trinidad, female radio DJs in Trinidad. And me and my sister, we got a teen program together. So when I was 16, I was my first radio show. And we would fight all the time on air, me and my sister, because we just never, she was very organized. I wasn't structured at all. And so during the breaks, we would just argue all the time. So they split us up and gave us separate shows. So when I was 17 years old, I was working at Ernst & Young, doing audit during the day. I was studying for my chartered accountancy exams from 5 to 8. And I was on radio at night from 8 p.m. till midnight. And I started the day all over at 6 o'clock. So I had 3 big things I was doing from 17 till 21.
That's nuts. You know, that's very strange to hear for people that grow up here. So when I grew up here, it's not custom for kids to be that A, entrepreneurial, or B, just make their own living in some sort of way. Versus like when I went to Canada when I was 18, and I heard similar stories all the time. Like, what, you were doing what at 12? You were doing what at 14? Like working McDonald's or anything else to be a bit more independent. But I do also remember like my first business venture was also pretty accidental like yours. I was 11 years old too. I was burning CDs of illegally downloaded series. I won't say which one it is, but it's about a bunch of people that know each other. There's 3 guys and 3 girls living in New York, and they're good friends with each other.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, you probably don't know about it. But yeah, I started burning them, downloading and burning them, and so I can watch them on TV. Like I take the CD back to the living room and watch it on a big screen. And then a buddy of mine is like, hey, can you give me that for 10 dirhams? I'm like, arbitrage. I didn't buy the CD. I didn't pay for the internet connection. I downloaded this for free. 10 dirhams. Yeah, take it. And 10 dirhams back in those days was like, that's 10 Pepsis. That's big currency. But yeah, I think having those kind of early experiences and selling brownies to car washing business to like that tells me so much about you already. You mentioned you went into EY. How long were you at EY for?
You know, I'm quite famous at EY because I what they call a triple boomerang. I left the company 3 times and I've been back. So
I'm gonna pause you there for a second because I have a tweet to read out. You probably know which one this is. So I think this was about 4 or 5 years ago where EY from their Twitter account tweeted, Dubai's Shivaun Gyan speaks about his boomerang journey with EY Mina and what keeps bringing him back. Have you told them that you're not coming back?
This time, for the 4th time, I don't know. I think I'm done this time. Yeah, I think they can't bear to see me anymore. Yeah. But that was a tweet, really?
That's a tweet.
That's
an actual tweet. Yeah, I'll send it to you after.
You never know what's out there, right? Jeez.
I just had to Google your name.
Wow. Yeah, you know, I haven't Googled myself in a while. Yeah. So I worked for them as an intern, then I worked for my dad's company. Then as I was a radio DJ, I went to have lunch with my friend, and the managing director saw me in the hallway and he's like, hey, you used to work for us. And I was like, yeah. He's like, yeah, I remember you were pretty good. Do you want a job? Do you want to come back? And he brought me and I was like, yeah, why not? And I came back and I started working again. I spent 8 months and then I got a job with EY in California. And that itself is its own story. But yeah, and then I moved to the US, when I was about 23-ish, to work in Silicon Valley from the Island Republic and not knowing what Silicon Valley was. And then I left again. And then maybe 8 years later, I ended up in the Middle East working for them again. So yeah, 3 times with EY.
Right.
It's a great company. Great company, great memories, great learnings.
Yeah.
And selfish plug for them. One of the best companies to work for. And
it's good to learn from these kind of organizations that are super organized anywhere, right? Like the lessons that you've taken from EY, are you able to translate them into your own businesses or for your clients?
Yeah, I mean, I told you the first time I left, after being with them for 18 months, I went to my father's company and I installed, I put in accounting systems and job cards and, started creating financial reports for him and just, 18 months, And so everything that I do today is shaped by the collective of all my experiences, of course. And I think as I advise business owners today, when you advise a company and you bring in your opinion or you ask questions, it's based on that collective experience. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, I had a guest on here, a good friend of mine who runs his own accounting VAT consultancy. And he spent a big part of his career at Emirates, the largest job creator of this city or nation really. And he was recommending to everyone that please go get a corporate career before you think of starting a business, and do it with a good company because you need those learnings. And in fact, why don't you get paid to learn and then take those lessons away? But there is something you were mentioning right before we hit recording as well. So a gentleman in the room asked about starting their own business, and you had a response. Can you tell me, what would you say to someone who's thinking of starting their own business?
Well, my response was, don't be an employee, right? And that was, partly facetious, and then partly true. I think there is value into understanding what being an employee is like, and how, because only when you've been an employee, then you start your own business after, you have employees' perspective and you know what to do and what not to do, right? You have to learn from the terrible bosses who are sometimes jerks in order to not be a jerk when you become an entrepreneur. So I think when you dive straight in, listen, different strokes for different folks, and I think it depends on your personality as well, and your upbringing, and your collective experiences. But if I was to take the typical person who went to high school, then went to college and had to start something, I'd say there is value in spending a few years at a company, being an employee that you like, to learn and emulate great behaviors, and make sure you don't develop terrible behaviors. Right. So understand teaming, understand how systems work, understand business from that perspective, and then start your own one. But, I've seen people who've gone straight into being their own bosses from the get-go, and they learn and figure it out on the way.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen both cases too, but you're right. You kind of have to identify that for yourself. So the gentleman that owns this studio, straight out of university, just started businesses with partners, some capital invested, living on cans on tuna because money isn't coming in. But that's the price you're paying to learn. So
that's your learning, right?
Yeah, it's
that's
like, what price are you willing to pay to learn? Are you willing to go broke? Are you willing to be on the street, or are you willing to take a employee 9-to-5 life? And they're all prices in the path of your learning, right?
Yeah, I saw a meme this week, which was a salary is the fee that a company pays you to forget your dreams. Ouch. But you seem like a curious kind of guy, so I don't imagine you ever being in employment and sticking to your kind of scope or role of work, right? I Have
feel
you
like
been Googling me again?
No, but just I can just tell you would love to poke around, because you can't go from doing that to going and running your dad's or helping your dad's businesses if you weren't that curious about hey, what are you guys working on? Hey, what are you guys working on? Hey, how can I learn something like that? Were you like that? Am I right to assume that you poke your noses around to get as much learning as possible?
Yes, I'm curious. I ask a lot of questions. But also I find where I realized that I would probably be a good advisor to companies and a good business owner one day was because I would see how things are done and instantly try to find my own way of doing it. Sometimes they were better, sometimes they were worse, right? But I felt that for me to feel interested in something, I had to figure out the Shivaun way of doing it, right? When I ran teams, nobody told me how to run teams. When I was 27, I became a manager for the first time of a team of people. And, I had up till that point, I had some pretty terrible examples of managers. And all I had as point of reference was, I just don't want to be like any of those people. So I had to figure out how I was going to do it. And so, yeah, I think I figured out my own way. I asked a lot of questions, but I did everything my way, to the point where I always had people, I'm not the smartest cookie in the jar, or right, the sharpest tool in the shed, whatever you say all the time, but I get it done, and I have a play hard, work hard mentality. I love to have fun in whatever I do, and I've always been known for that. And I was doing auditing and accounting, right? And if you can make that fun, right, you can pretty much make anything fun.
Yeah, that's why you were complimenting 4 nights of radio show or 4 hours of radio shows every day to kind of.
That was the other side of it, right? So yeah, you also know your personality. And if some people are clearly creative, some people are clearly analytical. I felt like I was a bit of both. So I was really good. Listen, I fell into audit and accounting just because I was good at it, not because I liked it.
Yeah.
Right. And I got this scholarship
But
from this esteemed
they're
firm.
related though, right? Being good at something and liking it are kind of interrelated, right? You are likely to be good at something that you like, and you're likely to like something if you become good at it, even if you didn't like it.
I don't feel that way about accounting. I'm a chartered accountant today. I was a CFO until I still am a CFO actually.
Yeah.
But CFO CEO, and I don't feel that way about accounting. I don't feel like I love the process of it. But I really value the outputs from it, and I can use the value of the outputs to run the business.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's quite an asset. And I like it because it's an asset, but I don't like the process of doing it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right. I like being able to look at financial statements and in 5 minutes figure out what's going on with a company, right? Just from that, and being able to talk about, what's wrong in a company. And that's a skill you learn after many, many years and many, many audits. Yeah. But I hated every single audit every single time.
Yeah, I don't see how you can enjoy that. Anybody can, really. But
there's people.
There are people.
There are people who really enjoy it.
Yeah, and good for them.
And good for them. Yeah.
You were mentioning a scholarship in between, and I cut you off.
Yeah, the scholarship was from EY.
Okay.
Pretty much. Okay. So I got into EY because they went around to Trinidad to the top accounting schools, the top schools, and went to the accounting programs, and they asked them to nominate the top 5 students from each school, and it was like 100 students. And then they kept whittling it down from 100, then to 50, then to 25, then to 10. And the top 10, they gave scholarships. It was me, one guy, and 8 ladies. And I didn't really care for the scholarship or accounting. I was just competitive. And because I got the scholarship, I was like, oh, geez, now I have to kind of go through with it, right? So that's how I ended up doing it.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean, because you either select where you're going to go, or life selects it for you in that kind of way too, right? You mentioned something in passing in there, which I want to dig into. You just kind of offhand said when you're a good business owner one day.
Yes.
What does that mean?
When I'm a good business owner?
Yeah. Or did I hear that wrong?
No. I thought I said when I'm a good business owner, I think.
You think you're a good business owner?
Yeah, I think I am.
Okay. Would you say that when would you say your current business, like how long has it been now?
I have 2 businesses.
Yeah.
2 businesses. So I for the last 3 years is when I've actually become an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Right. So I quit my job when I turned 40. So the exact midlife crisis really hit me hard.
And most people just get a car, Shivaun.
Most people get a car. But when I was 38, I'd been going to master classes for MBA programs for like 5 years and never committed to one. Because 1, they were expensive, and 2, I was like, what am I going to learn? But it was always one of my life goals to have an MBA, for whatever reason. People have different things that they like. I don't think it's necessary to have an MBA, but for me, I wanted to have one, right? I just felt that would make my mom proud. And that would make me say, you know what, I establish myself whenever I speak to people, whoever cares about it, open doors for me. So when I was 38, it was a 2-year program. And I said, well, now I have to bite the bullet and do it, because if I delay any longer, I'll be too old, right? I won't hit my life goal. So I was kind of I put myself into an MBA program. And when I hit 40, I realized, wait a minute, I think I'm ready. I think I'm ready for a change. I love this. I love this Big 4 ride, this auditing ride. I loved traveling. I mean, listen, this company let me travel to over 20 countries for work and living all over the place. I've lived in Africa. I've lived in Chad. I don't know if you know what Chad is.
I know. It's bordering with Niger, I think.
Nigeria. Yeah. Central African Republic.
Like right in the middle.
Yeah, it is the heart of Africa. I lived there, right? That's its own podcast.
Yeah.
I lived in Nigeria for a year and a half. I lived in Kenya. I've lived in, in Scandinavia, in the U.S. It's been all over the place.
I'm gonna get Seychelles as well, maybe.
Seychelles? No. I haven't lived in Asia. I've been and worked in Asia, but I've not lived there.
Okay.
Yeah. So my most recent and exciting revelation about places that I could possibly live, which I never thought was China. I spent most of 2019 in China.
Where in China?
In Shenzhen. I was working for a Chinese startup there, and they are setting up operations in LA. So I was between China, Dubai, and LA, Shenzhen, Dubai, and LA. And let me tell you, one of the most fascinating places I've ever been to in my life, China. Yeah, I could spend a few years there, I think. Even with the language difficulties. So yeah, you just never know where you're gonna end up, and life just takes you in crazy places.
It does. I want to go back to that time where you were having your midlife crisis. So obviously you mentioned that, time was a factor and it's getting kind of late. What was the anti of that? What were the doubts, considerations, fears? Like when you do your pros and cons list, what were the cons that were going on in your mind? What was the fear at that point that you may have wanted to try and avoid, that you were like, what were the objections that were coming from within you to jump into full-time entrepreneurship?
It didn't exactly happen like that. So when I was doing my MBA, one of the courses I specialized in was entrepreneurship and innovation. And I really loved the entire MBA experience. Not that it necessarily taught me a massive amount of new things, because I think if you got 20 years of work experience in finance and business and working for a company like I did, you kind of know a lot of the material, right? But when we got to entrepreneurship, we had a really amazing facilitator, shout out to Costas, who just really opened my eyes to what was possible here, and I just thought that this was in 2019. I just thought that the world was exploding with new startups and new ideas and new technologies, and things were happening. I was like, wow, I felt really restricted in my role in my current company, in my company at the time. And I went back to my company and I said to them, hey, I know I'm really good at this thing, audit and fine, but I'd really like to try strategy. I'd really like to try other things. And the advice that I was given from my direct counsel was, you've spent this long time in your career, 20 years, to get to this point. Why would you turn back now and jeopardize what you've worked for? And I said, so should I stay on the path of doing something that I no longer like because I spent 20 years already in it? Should I spend the rest of my life doing something I no longer enjoy? And so when I felt that, the forces that be around me were not appreciating that I could do other things because I was known for this one thing in the company, I said, you know what? I didn't feel like in that instance that my interests were top and foremost. And doing an MBA program for me and the diversity of the people, we had 36 people in my cohort of 20 different nationalities, right? And we traveled to the US, the UK, and it really opened my confidence level, right? And started saying, you know what, I can do other things. I can do, social media. I can do strategy. I can do project management. I can do so many things because you have the opportunity to put it on display. So when I decided to leave, I just left and took a sabbatical to finish my MBA. And during that time, the opportunity in China came up. And so that's when I took it. And I was like, you know what, I'm just going to run with it. I got confident enough in my life skills and abilities that I would not go hungry, right? Which is important to have a job. Yeah, I don't think I would be on the street. Knock on wood. I really have hope that never happens to me, right?
Yeah.
But I got to a point where I felt, you know what? I'm pretty confident that whatever happens, I can make a living. And the worst case scenario, I can go get another job. But let me give this a go. And if I don't try it now, I never will. Right. And that was the impetus for me to say, you know what? I flew from London. I was in London at the time, flew back to Dubai, got myself a Chinese visa, flew to Hong Kong, took a ferry over into Shenzhen, and showed up in this tech startup incubator to pitch for work to a bunch of people that didn't speak a word of English about a company that I had researched for about 2 hours, and with no access to Google because there's no Google in China, right? And so I had to pitch for 5 days with 2 other people, based purely on my mind and what I thought about strategy and how I would launch this company. It was like, it couldn't have happened at a better time than the end of my MBA, when I had just had all these things fresh in my memory. And we won the contract for a lot of money. And that's when I said, you know what, I can do this.
Yeah. And then you took your foray into full-time entrepreneurship with that incubator, like that. Would you count that as your first venture?
So it was me and two of my friends, and we started a company called Musin Audio, which was the subsidiary of that company in China. And we went to LA and we set up a company from scratch. Yeah. We basically, took a product and, 5x'd their revenue. They were selling online, and in 1 year, 5x'd their revenue into a few $1 million, with no experience before on this area. So I was the CFO of that company. My friend was doing the sales and marketing, and one guy was doing the IT and systems.
But was it that neat though? Like when you were CFO, you say, were you just a CFO, or were you kind of dabbling?
No, I was a secretary. I was the maid. I was the psychologist. I was the, guy arranging happy hour.
Which hat did you enjoy the most of that time?
I loved the craziness of it all.
Yeah.
Right? I think it was all mixed into one.
Yeah.
And so we were in LA trying to sell this Chinese product and differentiate and make it premium in a market that doesn't think Chinese products are premium.
Yeah.
And so, when we went to China, we really got into, and this is when I honed in on how I could differentiate things. I spoke to the inventor of the product and asked him his why. Why did he create it? How did he create it? And the products were Bluetooth vintage looking speakers. And this man is 70 something years old, and he'd been creating digital audio devices since he was 7 years old. And he said to us, music isn't noise, right? And his radios are different because the frequency that his sound resonates at is the most pleasant frequency for the air to receive. And he spent years trying to come up with that sound that was not too bass level, not too treble, but just in the right one. And so he proved that you could listen to typical headphones for 2 hours and it would start causing damage to your ears. This one you can listen up to 8 hours with no damage. And so to me, that was like, wow, he spent years trying to figure out the exact sound for your ear to receive audio at the right frequency. I thought that was amazing. Yeah. And everybody that we played the radio for, I asked them, does it sound like anything you've heard? It's like, it sounds great, but it doesn't quite sound like, these like typical
the usual radios.
Yeah, right. And it was a very pleasant sound and a happy sound, and that's because I knew where it came from and how the process was to create this radio. And so, and that became the kind of center of our speech. Yeah. Like, why is this little Bluetooth speaker any different to what Pioneer or any of these other ones can put out? I said, because it was crafted with love for many years and with the love for human ears and sound. And that's, it's not a commercial product. Yeah. Right? It's a product of love, really.
Yeah.
And that we could have only gotten that by speaking to the inventor himself. And that kind of resonates in everything that I do now. When I tell companies about, how do you differentiate yourself? Find why you're different. Find what's special about what you do. And that's the real key to success, I think.
Yeah. I mean, in the past generation, they used to call this blood, sweat, and tears. But I think that whole love and passion for the actual thing, that you don't care if it makes money. You are developing it maybe for yourself even, because you just have this mission in your head. But as much as that love and passion is there, the product always doesn't sell itself, no matter how good it is, right?
No.
And there is still something around that. So I think there is a Estee Lauder quote that you'll remember. He says, "I have never worked a day in my life without selling. If I believe in something, I sell it, and I sell it hard." And I wanted to ask you, we were talking about this earlier from that mompreneur session that you did and the selling mindset. You've come across probably a ton of business owners that are either not natural at selling, or they're not inclined to it, or they don't think it's their job, or they're just not interested, period. How do you get through to them on an ongoing basis? That workshop that you did was a good example, but on an ongoing basis, if an entrepreneur and whoever's looking to get into it is kind of fearful or uninterested in sales, what would you have to impart to them?
Well, first of all, with no sales, there's no business. That's just the commercial reality of it all. So people have to understand that's and who else is better placed to sell a business than its owner? Nobody has the passion like the owner. Nobody understands the context. Nobody understands the product, why they were chosen, how those services evolved, what they do for people. Nobody can speak about the business, its products and services like the owner. And so the owners may not think that they're selling, but they are, right? Because it's in everything that they say and talk about the business. So what they fear, a lot of business owners, is how do I convey the value of what I do and my products and my services without sounding salesy? And salesy got its roots in terrible car salesmen from U.S. movies that we've all seen growing up, right? Where they're
Bad
sleazy,
retail
bad
salespeople.
retail, exactly, right? Slimy, greasy, unethical,
Commission breath.
people. Yeah, exactly. And I think because we've all been influenced by American cinema growing up in some way or the other, we have that's our context of what a salesperson is until we actually start having a business for ourselves and realizing, no, there's a better way to do this, right? Or we've had a really good buying experience and realized that, wait a minute, there's multiple ways to sell, right? Because I could buy something and that was really smooth and slick and I didn't feel taken advantage of. Right?
I've bought things I didn't need because I just enjoyed the sales process.
Absolutely.
Like I just want to pay because I really enjoy the experience. I have no need for your product, but really appreciate a good salesperson, a really calm, caring, understanding. But sorry, I'm cutting you off. Go ahead.
No.
But like, how do you, what are some kind of exercises you do to change their mindset? Because partially you can do it through words by opening their eyes to something, but where do you find the aha moments for these founders when they're like, you know what, you're right, this is my bloody job and I'm going to find it within me somewhere, and you just see their lights pop up? Is there a turning point? Is there something that makes them go from light bulb off to on with sales?
Sure. I think that the most important skill or the most important thing in selling is having a great sales attitude. And what is that? It's pretty much creating a positive mindset about selling what you've got. And that is based in, if you feel that what you're selling is of value to someone and will solve a problem for them, then you get a certain level of confidence in selling to know, you know what, this is actually going to do some good here. Listen, 90%, maybe even more, of entrepreneurs that I work with are genuinely trying to solve problems out there for people, right? They're not in business. Yeah, they want to make money, but they want to sell. They want to solve problems. And if you could figure out the right audience that you solve problems for, the passion that you will have, the confidence in selling that, in communicating the value of them taking your thing, will improve your sales mindset, right? So understanding why you're selling and understand why they're buying. That's really, really important. And then it doesn't become the stereotypical sales, right? I always tell people, if you're not selling or sales are going terrible, check your mindset first, right? If you're not feeling it, guess what? They're not going to feel it either.
Yeah.
Right? People can read non-verbal signals even more than verbal signals, right? So
Absolutely.
if you're saying buy my product, your face looks run far away from me, or I hate my job, then what are they going to do, right? They're just you're not going to make that sale.
Yeah.
So do things to put yourself in the right mindset for sale. So one is that why. Another one is remembering, that you are the expert in what you're doing. And I teach this in some of my sessions, which is, if the word expert is quite contextual. A lot of people feel that they are not the expert because they haven't done it for donkey years, or because they're not published, or because they haven't appeared on a talk show or a podcast, and so they're not an expert. But if you think about life in general, and you're teaching someone, say, let's go back to childhood. If you know how to ride a bike, and you're teaching some other kid who doesn't know how to ride a bike, you're the expert in bike riding, right? So in that context, you're the expert. You're telling them how it's done. You're telling them what to avoid. You're the mentor, and you're helping them to do this thing they want to do, right? And if you parlay that into the business context, in whatever you're selling, and you know more about that than the person buying from you, then you're doing them a service and not a disservice, right? And so if you can figure out, I'm an expert and I have something of value to give that's going to solve a problem, then your mindset automatically clicks in, right? And so I think confidence is the biggest thing. When people say they don't like sales, it's often because they don't feel they have the confidence for sales. Right. And
which relates to the belief in what they're doing and why they're doing it.
It's kind of like a wall that they put up to say, you know what, I hate this thing, but it's not because you hate it, it's because you fear it.
Yeah.
Right. And you fear it because you don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And you don't have a mentor.
And that's a vicious cycle.
Selfless plug for a sales coach out here is that, sometimes, you go to the gym, and if you go to the gym for the first time, you don't know what to do, you got a trainer, you're right. You got a coach to tell you what to do, right? If you have a business that you never sold before, get a sales coach. Let them teach you, right? I think people feel that, that getting a coach in business makes you lesser than or inadequate in some way, right? But again, back to the gym example, you don't feel inadequate. You just don't know how to do that thing, right? And you want someone who's more of an expert to tell you, right? So I feel like I have clients. So I coach quite a lot of companies, and I can tell you, I have one or two of them. The majority are really boasting about, I have a sales coach. He's great. We're doing this thing together. And I have like one or two who won't ever tell anybody that they have a sales coach, not because of me, I think, but because they don't want to seem inadequate to their circle of friends. That, you know what, I needed help with this.
Yeah.
Right. And so, that's kind of, again, an attitude thing.
Yeah.
Right. If you believe in an attitude, you have an attitude of collaboration and cooperation, and two minds are better than one. Yeah. Then you'll embrace that entire, or whatever help you could get.
Yeah. And you can zoom out that attitude into other things and how you approach life too. Like my worst decision that I made, I started learning guitar on my own, and it took me 6 years to learn to play at the level which I could have done in 6 months if I just paid a bloody teacher or a tutor to come and teach me. But no, I was sitting online. I got the tab side open, this finger, that finger, claw shape. And I could have really sped up my journey. And that's something that I constantly think of now, because I have that ingrained in me, what you're talking about. I have that disease. Why should I take help? Does that mean I'm inadequate? I can't figure it out on my own?
So what you just hit there is one of the most important things. It is a coach is an accelerator.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
I'm currently playing paddle right now. So I don't know if I'm part of this. I've been sucked into this whole paddle tennis.
We have to play together.
Yeah.
So. Are you still doing it in JVC?
Not really. No, it's too far. And I was I played tennis before. So I figured, you know what, paddle tennis, I could figure this out. And, I was doing all right. It's one of those games where you could actually, anybody can learn to be functional at it. But getting good at it takes some skill. And so eventually I just caved, and I got a trainer, and he screamed at me for about an hour, and he told me to run faster, jump higher, hit harder, and stop complaining. And he was awful to me. But you know what? I learned so much in that one session. Immediately I went to play the same guys I was playing with, and they're like, what happened to you? You've gotten like 2 levels. So I got a level higher up just from one session, because I just said, you know what, let me get a coach. Yeah. So I'm gonna I think people who coach understand the value of coaches. So I get coach. I have a coach. I have a sales coach. And I was gonna
ask you about that. So actually we'll get to that in the point. I'm also making notes for a round 2, because there's so much I want to get into that I don't think we'll get into today. So you have to come back for this one.
Oh wow, okay.
But I do understand that point about having the whys. Okay, I'll tell you a bit about my background that relates to yours. So I worked in the finance field for 7 years in a corporate job as well. One of those careers that chose me and I didn't choose it. Became really good at it, and I do relate. I didn't like it no matter how good I got at it. And we used to have this mentality. We were being trained and coached all the time on selling and with solution selling. So that was the reframing that we did. You're not selling, You're looking to find problems. If you diagnose a good problem, figure out if you can solve it. If you can solve it, you owe it to your client to let them know that you can solve their pain and their misery. And it actually takes the selling out of it, because you've done nothing more than what a doctor does. You take a scope and you check, okay, irregular heartbeat. Do you want to fix this irregular heartbeat? If you do, there are these options that can help you. And you take that kind of approach. Wanted to ask you, and jumping to a next question here, is that when you're selling, maybe this is for yourself, maybe this is for other clients, maybe, and I'm asking from a B2B perspective because I'm selfish, but sometimes you come across clients that won't be good for your business. And you want to turn them away respectfully, because you don't need everyone, right? You have a very specific, people need to come up with their ideal customer from experience that don't burn you out, give you the respect as a partner as you want. How do you deal with those? Because I'm assuming your time is limited as a coach, right? Like there's only 24 hours a day, you need your life. So you're probably pretty careful about who you bring on as a client for yourself. What are for you the telltale signs of, like, you know what, this is not going to be a job for me? You're on a certain different level.
So I think we all know who those people are when we start speaking to them. I have this thing. I get to know if I like someone in the first 30 seconds of speaking to them, right? And equally, I know when I don't like someone, or let me put it more politically correct than that, when I wouldn't be a good fit as a coach with a particular client or prospect, because they're not a client yet. And sometimes, in business, you take the job anyway, because you know what, you got to pay those bills, right? You look at this. I had one particular prospect, and this particular individual, I knew she was going to be really difficult, and I looked at her and I knew how much I was going to charge for what I was going to do, and I said, that's my DIWA bill and my my Etisalat bill, right?
For the month.
And if I could just stand this and bring some value to her, because I know I wouldn't take on someone if I can't help them, but you also have to have some self-care too, right? And so I'm like, God, she's going to be really difficult to work with, but that's my DIWA bill, my this bill and that bill, and you know what? I could figure it out, right? And I've done things like that. I've taken those kinds of clients on and lived to regret it every single week, because, it's just not a match. And they're not a match for your business, for your personality, for people. I think the most amazing thing about being an entrepreneur is getting to choose who you work with.
Yeah.
Right? When you're an employee, you have to work with all the jerks that you get assigned to who are in your group, right? And you have no choice. Right? You could ask to move, but very rarely. But as an entrepreneur, you get to choose your tribe. And as a coach, I get to choose my tribe. I love my tribe now because I've chosen them. But there's a saying in sales, which is always be closing. That's the most famous one. For me, it's always be qualifying. Right?
I like that.
Always be ABQ.
ABQ.
Right? And the first thing I do when I talk to someone is I qualify them to see if if I could help them, if I got to their problem, but most importantly, would I like to work with this person, and would I want to see them every single week and be in touch with them all the time? And if the answer is no, right, and everything else lines up, it becomes tricky, as you said, as to how do you part ways amicably, right? There's so many different ways to say this, right? And it depends on the circumstance and the service, but
can I give you an example? I'm going through right now.
Okay.
So I took a discovery call on this Wednesday, right? And it's for a service that I haven't launched yet. So we do B2C marketing. We do it pretty well. We've been doing it for a long time. I'm looking to just finalize the package for B2B marketing. And we got on this call, and I thought it was going to be a B2C, so I prepared my discovery call template. Everything is like there. And she's like, no. We actually want to expand into retail stores. And, if you're listening, she already knows this now. But, throughout the conversation seemed like an exciting opportunity. And then I said, okay, I have to be very clear and very honest. This is in the beta phase. If you do come on, it'll be a test trial. and you'd be the first one to try this out. And I'm not launching before September. She was very sold. I don't know how well I pitched, because when you're talking about confidence, I have none in my B2B service right now, which I'm developing. And she's very sold. It's like, no, what can you start earlier? I said, I don't know. She's like, try August 15th, August 18th. So I started looking at my calendar, and I'm getting weaker and weaker by the second. And then I'm like, you know what? Why don't you give me a week to think about it? So it's Wednesday. Let's talk next Wednesday. She's like, can we talk sooner? Can we talk on Friday instead? So what I'm hearing is like, if I start working with you, everything's going to be like, where's my leads? Yes. Where's my copy? Where's my stuff? And so I tried the pricing thing too. I'm like, okay, let's see how she deals with pricing. Did the pricing thing and immediately asked for a discount. Immediately, right? I'm like, okay, everyone has a right to ask for a discount, but like that fast, like you're already ready with a number and stuff. So I have a follow-up call, which in my moment of weakness, I booked it for Saturday.
Yeah.
I never take sales calls on Saturdays. Saturdays is family days.
Okay.
So I have to find a way. And I went to sleep at night on Wednesday with a bad gut feeling. I'm like, this is not for me. Like, I don't think I can manage this person. Like I would be great friends with her. We would chill out, hang out on the beach. It'd be great. But business is going to be different. So I want to softly break up before the relationship starts. So how do you amicably kind of manage
you just
that?
have you out there, right? You know that she's pretty price sensitive because she's asked for that discount.
Yeah.
So then you don't offer a discount, right? Beyond that, I'm very anti-discounts to begin with anyway.
Yeah.
Right. I don't believe in discounting your service. You charge what you charge for your service because you think it's worth that.
Yeah.
And it's going to bring X amount of value.
Yeah.
So I would even say something. Sorry, we don't discount because we want to show up for you and we want to provide the best service. And if we feel that what we're delivering is undervalued, which it would be if I gave you a discount, then you're not going to get the best out of us. So I think you could have that spend with a better ROI somewhere else.
I partially did say this because of my lack of confidence. I said, like, I don't think I'm the right choice for you. Mm-hmm. She still wants to go ahead. So
yeah, no, I think you'll say, and it's true. Always when you have an excuse or a reason for walking away, make sure it's grounded in some bit of truth, so that it comes across as being, really authentic.
It is though. Like there's a lot of authenticity to that. Whatever you're saying, as the response there, because it is true. Like for me to work hard for you, I need to be compensated fairly. Yeah. And for that to happen, I need to be confident in my service, which I'm not. Yeah. So both those things put together, it's not you, it's not me. It's just not the right time, not the
And
right
you don't
fit.
want to show up resentful for someone making you do that thing that you're not prepared to do mentally.
Yeah, and maybe I'm flaring up because of my own lack of confidence with what I have, and I'm pushing it on like, oh, I didn't like the attitude. It could be that too. But at the end of the day, whatever the reason is, I feel like I do need to find, as you said, like a more respectful way of calling it off. And even going with like a 3-month minimum, for example, I'll only start if you pay 3 months upfront, which is going to be, I know for sure, going to be a no.
Yeah, the easiest way is to price someone out. If you know they're sensitive. You can also talk about, bandwidth, right? If you take this on, you're not going to have the ability to work with people you want to work with too. No. So the opportunity cost is really greater than you trying to work with this person now. I have one of my clients in that particular position right now, where he's taken on a job what he didn't want to do at a lower margin, and then he's got this bigger job with a big margin. Now he doesn't have any staff to deliver it. So he's stuck, right, figuring out what do I do? How do I subcontract this? That sort of thing. So yeah, bandwidth and availability is to do that. And just say, at the very most honest level, said, you know what, I'm just not the right person for this. Mm-hmm. Right? I think I don't want to take your money and not deliver you stellar results. Yeah. I think the result, it's just too unpredictable for me to take this on right now. And I don't think I'll be doing you I'll be doing you a disservice by doing that. Yeah. So I just come out and say it.
That's the funny part, because I said I'd recommend you to someone else on the call too, and she's still like wanting to go with what I have. But
are you sure she really wants your service?
I think so, but I'm gonna skip that example for now. I want to do one last sales question, and then we go into the coach's coach.
Oh boy.
Okay, so we attended one of your life workshops. Amazing ones. If you ever see Shivaun hawking his live events on LinkedIn, just go. Trust me, Alina and I went. Well worth the time. It doesn't matter how long you've done sales for. You're gonna find something that you don't understand about your own pitch, for example. So I want to talk about pitches. And you discussed that day 4 elements to pitches, like the 4 main elements. Am I getting the number? Was it 3?
3.
4? Oh, I had an extra one in my head. What are the 3 main elements of a pitch, if you can briefly describe them?
I think first, let me just say, there's different approaches to pitches, and and the pitch should be authentic first and foremost. So if you should create a pitch that suits your personality, that suits your vibe, right? Because otherwise it sounds forced and unbelievable, right? I say that to say because not everybody needs to have, hey, I can double your sales in 3 months, right? That's not how some people establish likability, right? Some people might need to say, hey, I've been a sales coach for 20 years and I've helped 250 companies double their sales in 2 years. Let's talk about how we could do yours, right? That's a different approach. That is establishing yourself as a credible person with numbers before getting into your pitch. Another one that could be dazzling them. So the first part of a pitch is something to grab people's attention. In the sales world, that's called a hook line, right? In one of the most famous models for creating an elevator pitch or sales pitch is a wow, how, and why now. Right? And the wow is simply a hook line. What is that thing that you're going to say to someone to get them to elicit this response? Wow, tell me more. Right? If you're pitching someone and they haven't said tell me more, then you know you've not been successful at that pitch. Right? That's just the easiest way to tell. Because some people say, tell me. I don't know. I pitched my service. I don't know if it was good or not. Did they ask for more? Did they try to meet you? No. Then it didn't work. Right? It could have been good, but maybe something in the moment didn't work, right? So, wow, get a good hook line. And a hook line can be some audacious fact. It could be a statistic. It could be a statement that, take my service and I'll change your life in 20 seconds, whatever that is. The point is, you're not trying to sell the entire service in this wow. It is just something to say to catch people's attention. People's attention is so little. So little these days. It's what I read somewhere. It's 1.3 seconds is what you got, because that's how long it takes to scroll. It's one of the stats I was saying, right? So if you think about it and you're going through your Instagram, or and you're just scrolling, how many things do you scroll by in a second? Maybe 3, right? So imagine in real life, there's so many distractions as well, including people holding their phones that are attached to them, right? So you're not just competing with other people, you're competing with people's phones, so their best friends, right? So what is that thing that you're going to get people to stop doing that thing and say, whoa, this is worthwhile? So for your business, you need to figure out what that wow is, and and choose something that's your style. I typically like to say something. I'm kind of an extrovert most times, so I like something audacious, and so I would say I would go with that because that suits my personality, right? If I was to start by talking about my credibility for 23 years, then maybe it'll appeal to some people, but it's not my style, right? I've seen people use facts like statistics really effective. Did you know that? I don't know, that we spend 1/3 of our days on admin tasks, right? How many hours a day do you spend doing admin as a business owner, right? That's not that crazy, but a reflective question to make you start thinking, wait a minute, and you start going through your calendar and going through your day before and figuring, wait, did you know that time could be spent doing something else? And you start thinking, crap, I've spent 4 hours a day on stuff I shouldn't be spending time on, right? Now let me listen to what this person has to say, right? Because they've said something that resonates with me. And the more universal you can make that wow, that appeals to every demographic, or at least the demographic you're talking to, that's the one that will go. And you got to try it out on your friends. If you try it on your friends and take your most sarcastic or that friend that will give you the direct response and will tell you, comb your hair, your face looks greasy. That one, that friend, that's the one you try it on. So you get a wow, and then you get into what's your service. And then, I won't go into that because everybody should know what they do and what they sell. And then the why now is probably the next most important thing. Why I could love what you say and I can love what you sell, but why should I take you seriously and do something about it now, right? What's that thing that's going to get me to act? For some people, that's giving them an offer. For some people, that's saying, I only have bandwidth to work with one more person. So I've got 3 calls lined up. Do you want to go? Right, that sort of thing. So what is that thing that's going to create urgency for somebody to, and usually in the retail world, it's price related, right? We've got a special on for the rest of this month. And if you don't, it's going to go up by next month, right? Mm-hmm. And one thing I'll say on that, if you are going to use that price tactic and you say, I'm going to have this offer open for the rest of this month, and you don't raise your prices next month, then you look like a fool. Right? You've lost all your trust and credibility. So do what you say you're going to do. If it is an offer, make it an offer. I don't care if you raise it by $1, but raise it.
Yeah. No, we moved to Dubai 4 years ago, and my sister, who already lived here, she's like, oh, you guys are looking for furniture. Go to this place. They've got a sale on. That place and all the other furniture places have been on sale for the last 4 years. For the exact 30 to 70% off banner has not come off, right? Yeah. So it loses credibility, like you don't believe the pricing.
So you don't have urgency to buy because it'll be there next week, right? Yeah. So if you want someone to take action, and it doesn't have to be a sale, but it could be the next step or enter your, what we call the sales process. Just start having talks with you about buying your product. And it doesn't do that, then your why now hasn't worked. So that's what I'll say. So put it together. How long should the pitch be? An elevator pitch should probably be a minute or 2. Tell a story. If you find a great way to tell a story or weave a story into your pitch that lasts about 45 seconds, right, within the pitch, then that's a great way of making people believe you.
Especially about a previous client, maybe.
Yeah, exactly about a previous client. I've got this client, Annie, who had this particular problem. I helped her by doing X, Y, and Z, and in five months, she doubled or tripled her sales because of X, Y, and Z. Yeah. It doesn't take long to say that, right? But you've got to be prepared with your stories. So look at your past clients, see how you helped them, and try to synthesize that into 45 seconds. And if you could do that, then you have stuff to tell. And you know what? Once you've made your point, and this is the last part I'll say about a pitch. Yeah. And somebody's acted and said, okay, great, I'll have a meeting with you, and you set up a meeting, leave, right? Stop the conversation and leave.
Don't oversell.
Right? Because you know what? If you realize they're interested in you and you'll keep talking about it, and you know what? You'll lose the anticipation, the urgency, and all that sort of stuff. So walk away, especially at a networking event, and say, listen, I'm going to speak, respectfully. I'm here to network. Let me go speak to some other people.
Yeah.
Right? Make your point and move on, because you're going to catch them the next day.
Yeah.
But I can't tell you how many people, they've made the sale and they've talked themselves out of the sale because they've oversold you.
You're just staring into my soul right now. Because I don't know how to walk away. I can't shut up. I just keep on going. My only other strategy to stop talking is ask them questions about themselves. But I'm guilty of that. Improving every day.
I see it happen all the time. Yeah.
Marwan, were you taking notes on the pitch thing there? He's looking to develop his pitch. So I don't know if you remember how we used to write our ad copy. Similarities in what you were saying. So when we do ad copy for our clients, we always have started with a hook. It has to be relatable. It has to be a stat that, you pull out some stats. So if you're selling skincare stuff, pull out some weird, strange, or completely out there skincare stat. Some percentages of women, exactly. And we go with that urgency thing with 30 spots left. This voucher is only good for 29 more spots. So I think there's a lot of overlap between selling online through written text versus selling there. But I want to switch to you having your own coach, because I find that interesting. Like most of my people that I know that are consultants or coaches always have a coach. It's almost like having skin in the game, right? Like I am giving you coaching services because I myself have a coach. And even personal trainers have their own personal trainers as well, right? So how have you benefited from your coach, or ongoing benefits from the coach? And if you want to mention, who do you call most at 2 a.m. for business advice?
Nobody. I'm in bed at 2 a.m. I'm an old man now. I'm in bed at 11 o'clock. What's wrong with you?
Is it just me that's up thinking?
Yeah, just you.
Me.
I've had various coaches in life for different things. And some have been more mentors than coaches, but I actually have a sales coach. I'm a sales coach and I have a sales coach. And I think that people don't realize that coaches aren't meant to tell you everything. Coaches are meant to ask you questions because you're the expert in your business and you're supposed to come up with the answer. So stop being lazy, right? One client I have, she's like, I want to post something on LinkedIn. Give me 5 ideas. And I was like, well, what do you think you should post? That's why I'm messaging you. I said, well, then we have a problem, right? I'm supposed to teach you how to think, right? So your coach is supposed to do that, to bring out the best in you, not solve your problems for you. When you go to the gym, does your coach lift your weights for you and say, those are great squats, and then do your squats for you? No, right? They teach you the form and teach you how to do it. Similarly, my coach gives me accountability. I meet with him once a week, and he gives me accountability more than anything else.
Once a week?
Yeah.
It's intense.
Yeah. He says to me, last week, and he tracks what we talk about. So the next week, he starts to call every week with, well, last week you said you were going to do X, Y, and Z. So how did that go? Tell me how that went before we get into this week. So I know he's going to ask that. So what do I do before I get on it? I make sure I do everything that I was committed to do last week before I even start the conversation, because I know that's where it's going to go.
I love it.
Right? So it gets done and I get it off my plate, and then we start talking about new tasks for the week. Right? Where do you think this could have gone better? If I lose a client for whatever reason, what do you think you should have done better? And I might have it in my brain, but having a coach lets you talk about it and bring it out and make it real. And then put an action plan in place to say, I won't ever do that again. I won't ever offer a discount because I get resentful for delivering the product, right? The service after. So that's what the best thing about coaches is someone to talk to. Being a business owner is very lonely. And you suffer from this thing I learned during my MBA. Hello, I shout out to Bayes Business School. Is groupthink, right? And it's a concept, for those of you who don't know, that when a group of people work together and live in a business, and worse if they're partners, they suffer from groupthink, which is they all have the same way of thinking about something. And what that does, it kills all diversity of thought and solutions. And so I really find having a coach, and a coach really disrupts groupthink within a company. Because if you're running your business and you say you have 10 staff, and you go to your staff and say, hey, I was thinking we should do this great thing. Every Friday we should wear clown suits with red noses and go and sing Habibi, I love you outside, right? Whatever it is. And everybody was like, oh, that could be all right. Right? Nobody thinks that's
researching my company.
Nobody thinks that's a good idea, but because the boss says it, everybody's going to be like, and eventually they're going to start thinking, hey, this is the right thing to do. So having a coach is a good coach will tell you, shake you up and say, why do you think that's a good idea? What is that going to do for your business? Eye on the prize. Does that bring you money? As an entrepreneur, you could do 40 hours of busy work and not make a single dirham. Right? So I always ask my clients, and my coach asked me this, is that getting you closer to your sales goal? Are you making money from that? Or was that just busy work?
You did that with me too. When we mentioned the podcast to you, your second question was, okay, how is this going to make money? And I had to give you like a list of like 4 things. And you're like, why aren't you doing that now?
Right.
That
Exactly.
was supposed to be yesterday, right? Like This is not leisurely work. Like, can you think like that?
I mean, it's good to have passions that don't bring you revenue, but if this is a revenue generating business, then it should generate revenue.
Well, that's the way I look at it. So the reason I got into business, and everyone has their reasons to get into business, right? And I came up with 3 reasons. So number 1 was to have that lifestyle. You talked about earlier, you get to choose your tribe. That's what I call lifestyle, right? Being around people that give me energy, which includes play. So I like my time to be spent on work to seem like play. which this is for me, right? Second is money. It's not the first, it's not the last, but it's definitely there. And the third thing, business should be a creative expression. It's how I leave my mark on the world in a creative way. And when it comes down to that, and you think you can marry all those three things, which even you mentioned, or you pushed it a bit harder for me, was that, well, you're already having fun with it. It is play for you. It is a creative expression, and you can make money from it. That's a golden trifecta for me to start thinking about. Man, I'm glad I don't have accountability calls for you, because I haven't worked on those things that I told you about.
Wait till I start coaching you. We'll see.
But yeah, it's also very objective, right? From a coach's level, like they don't care about your feelings as much versus like, does this make objective sense, what you're talking about, and they make you think about things on that level too.
I wouldn't say like certain clients, business owners can be very defensive and sensitive people because of their businesses or their babies. And you don't go tell somebody their baby's ugly. Yeah. Right? I mean, you could, but you shouldn't. Right? Yeah. Even though it might be true sometimes.
You're telling me now.
Right? So you have to be really, as a coach, you have to be really careful not to insult someone's passion or insult what they're doing. You have to say, reason you told me you're doing this thing is because you want to achieve X and Y. Do you think what you're doing right now is getting you closer to that objective? Right? For them to have some self-realization that what they're doing is just busy work. Yeah. Right? But I could have gone straight and told them, stop doing that. But being a coach is not about telling. Being a coach is about asking the right questions.
Or making them realize.
Yeah, making them realize on their own.
Because that's selling too, right? If you make them realize that they need to solve their problem.
And I don't solve it with my opinion. You told me when we started, this is what you wanted to do. Is this in line with what you told me about it? Yeah. So it takes me completely out of the equation.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? Can I ask you, what are some of the things that you are struggling with, that you're working on right now with or without a coach? Like, what are the areas that you've identified for yourself that you figure you could use a bit of self-learning or self-coaching or even looking for external help? Is there anything that particular that comes to mind currently?
I think as an entrepreneur, you put everything into your business when you get started and what you're trying to do. And it's very easy to neglect yourself, right? And so for many years, even as an employee, I didn't look after my health enough. I didn't sleep enough. It wasn't because I was working all the time, but I was just like you, up thinking till 2:00 in the morning. What else could I do here? Right. And I started realizing that in order to have a balanced life, I sat one day and I didn't like how my life was going. This was not too long ago. Right. I didn't like how I felt overall. I had a call with my big sister, who is like my best friend and my their confidant, and she's like, "What's wrong with you?" Because she obviously knows me since I was born, right? And I was like, you know what? I just feel something's off. I feel not right. And she's like, "Are you sleeping enough? And she started asking me questions. So she's my coach in another way. And I was like, I realized I wasn't sleeping enough. I wasn't making time for health. I was eating on the go. Right? I was eating whatever fast food I could find on the way. I was exercising not regularly, right? And I was not making time for my friends and social, right? And so I started, wow. So when I looked at it and I drew a little pie chart, it was like 90% of my life was work. And I was like, that's not the way to live, right? So I actually devised a system, which will soon be made available. And I haven't given it a name yet, but it's the way that I run my life now. And I run it via a calendar, something like calendar. The concept is this: we've got a few hours a day, right, in life, and those are limited, right? And you could have so many things competed for that limited time slot. But what are the most important things in life? You gotta, what they say, the Americans love this saying, fill your tank, right? But it is really grounded in something true. You can't help others unless you're helping yourself first, right? You put your oxygen mask on an airplane first, right? Because you have to help yourself to help others. That's the best example, right? Yeah. So put your own oxygen mask on. What does that mean? Every human needs food, proper sleep, and exercise, right? So in my calendar, I put those three things in first. I don't put anything about my family. I put me first, right? And I put those three things, and I block off my sleep time. I block off my lunch time because I was missing lunch some days. I block off lunch and I block off dinner, right? So then I start blocking off my gym time, my paddle tennis time. And then I started going, okay, what's my next role in life? Okay, I'm very close to my mom and my sister. So I put time in my diary every day. I mean, my sister's in San Francisco, my mom is back home in the Caribbean. Mm-hmm. And we talk every single day. Every day. So I put that into my calendar, right? Every single day. I know people who don't see their parents for, so long, and they don't speak to them. We speak every single day. And we're all constantly messaging each other. So I put my family time in first, right? You could have a husband, wife, whatever. Put that in first. Then the next thing is socially. There's few people in your life that bring you joy in your friendship circle. There's people in your life who drain your energy. Figure out who those people are in each bucket. You know what? And stop having time and giving time to the people in the negativity bucket. Right? People who you meet up and have a good laugh with, and you have different friends for different things. I have one friend who's great for gossip. I have one good friend, just like playful gossip. I have one good friend who likes to go out and eat. I love sushi, who loves my restaurant friend, right? And I don't see him any other time just to eat, right? Because he loves food, I love food, and we like to go out and eat, try new restaurants. That one. I have a friend who likes to go watch movies. That's what the one. So I have the things I like doing, I have a friend for each of those, right? And I put them in a rotation at least once a week to see one of those people, because I know they help fill my cup, right? Of laughter, of fun, of things I like doing. And then energize me.
Yeah.
And then Naeem, at that point, that's when I start thinking about work. That's when I start scheduling work. Because if those things aren't taken care of, your work life is going to make you miserable and dominate. And when you realize you've done that, my friends laugh at me because I send them a meeting request for lunch on a Saturday, right, on via calendar, because that's how I schedule it, right? And then I start color coding everything in my calendar so that I can see blues are for exercise, green is for learning, this is for whatever, and this is the way I work. And let me tell you something, the rest of the time, you make your work fit in there and you get all your work done. You know why? Because you don't want to compromise all the other things, right? So for me, that's something I've been exercising for the last 2 months. And my sales coach saw me yesterday on Zoom, and he said to me, something's changed in you. Something's clicked in you. You seem happier.
You seem lighter.
Yeah. Right? You seem more complete. You seem, what have you been doing? Right? And it's because I've taken this approach to running my life. Right? Prioritizing the things that are important and that fill and give me energy, and the people I don't have time for, I'm sorry, I don't have. Learn to say no to people. Learn to say no to tasks. Learn to say no to terrible prospects for business, right? Anything that brings you down and drag you, learn to find a way to say no. Sometimes you're going to have to help a friend move a house and you don't want to do it, but that's part of being a friend, right? But so that's how and funny enough, I'm a very work-oriented person, but I've switched the tables in the complete opposite and put my work last. But when I do work, I do deep work and I do it really well, right?
Because you're now operating with constraints, right? Before you didn't have constraints, so any open time means work time. And I sort of relate to this, and Alina needs to talk to you more often, or I'll recommend her to call you, because we're working on her for the same thing. So you're mentioning about filling the cup or filling the tank, and we had a guest on yesterday, American, Christiana Maction, a Dubai matchmaker. So she's building a beautiful business down here. The way she was framing what you were saying, a very similar kind of mindset, but the way she framed it, she said, I work 24/7, but she said, I don't burn out. And I asked why. And she said, when I go to yoga, that is work, because I'm working on myself. So I am available and ready for my business with a fresher mind and a fresher body. When I go to the gym, I count that as work because it's investment in myself. As you were saying, you go to meet your friends to fill up your energy tank. So it's an investment back in the business, right? Or getting yourself some downtime with your family. It's an investment in your business, because you come back potentially, and this is my guess, and you tell me it's right or wrong, you make better decisions, maybe. You make calmer decisions. you start understanding what to say no to. So being able to say no is one thing, but knowing what to say no to is another thing, which is the level that I'm at, figuring out what exactly do I need to say no to. I think that's really beautiful that you're doing that. And I'm pretty happy to see and hear that you do feel much lighter and it's giving you a nice, fresh perspective. I just wonder, does it have to, these kind of stories always come with I was close to burnout and then I got out.
Mm-hmm.
And this is such a common entrepreneur thing, which I kind of tried to fight from the start of the business to my detriment. So the entrepreneurial community in Dubai can be pretty toxic as well, in the sense that if you're not working hard, you're not respected the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a lazy entrepreneur, very lazy. I don't get stuff done because I've been doing what you're doing, but going to bed at night with guilt.
Yeah.
Oh, look at XYZ's business. He's doing so well, but he works all the time. So maybe, I'm never going to make it big because I don't work as hard. But he hasn't taken care of his health, doesn't have relationships in his life, but his business is doing super well. And I've always struggled with this guilt. And it's kind of nice hearing from you that, if you kind of operate from this kind of perspective where you block off things that give you the energy so that when you are available, even if it's for less time than you have in a day, that's quality time to the business. And you're not out there chasing your tail like a lost dog or a chicken with its head cut off. But still.
Now that you mention it, I am available. My clients call me to give me a pitch at 10 o'clock in the night sometimes. So, a lot of times I'll ignore it. But sometimes if I know it's really important, I'll pick it up and I'll have a 5-minute chat. Right.
But you're not resentful about it because you've looked after yourself.
Correct.
You've had the day that you wanted. So there's no resent with that. You would probably do it before too.
Yeah.
But it might have left you with a little less energy after
Yeah, exactly. Another one calling me. Yeah. And and I've been very unapologetic about it. So why didn't you pick up my call last night? I said it was 10 o'clock. I was watching TV.
Yeah.
Right. So, that was my time, and was it something urgent? 99% of the time, the house isn't burning down.
Yeah.
Right. People will take advantage of you if you let them do so. If you make yourself eternally and all the time available, they'll call you at any time.
It's like being in a job too, right? This is one thing I've learned from being in a job. Maybe you too. After 5 o'clock, I don't have to give an F, right? You give your constraints and you start having this life. I used to busk on the streets of Toronto with my guitar after wearing a suit for an entire day. But it gave me the energy to go back and do that miserable job that I was doing. But because it's a job, you can tell your boss, I'm available after 5. But as a business owner...
No, not at a job I had before.
The
job I had before, if you don't give stuff I worked in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
Right? And let me tell you something about working there in consulting. Yeah. You are available. Your job is your... That's it. That's your life. That's your life. I have my clients. I'm there from 7:30 in the morning till midnight. And you're at the printers printing out accounts, and it's constant. And if you're unavailable on the weekends and so on, I had a boss here. I went to pick up my mom at 2 p.m. on a Saturday when she showed up in Dubai, and I didn't answer her call. I told her I was going to the airport to pick up my mom, who I hadn't seen in a year, and because I didn't pick up her call, she sent up a note to our boss to say that I was not responsive and available for important client business. 2 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon, right? So there's people like that still exist right here in Dubai. And that person is quite a miserable individual because all she does is work, right? And she has no life, no friends, no anything. And every time we speak, she tells me how unbalanced her life is. Right. But then they do things like this and create toxicity, and you realize, wait a minute. Yeah. This is not how I want to be.
Right. So. And it's let's say those kind of people exist and it works for them to be that way. As long as you realize you're not a right fit, don't do it. Maybe she'll get an employee that is happy to be on a call at 2 p.m. because their lives are also revolving around work, and they haven't invested in any other areas of their life to make their life a bit more colorful in other ways. The diversity maybe they're looking for is how many things can I do at the job? And when they find a mix, maybe they'll be happy together as well. So there's someone for everyone in that respect.
What does success mean to you is the question, right? Is success mean, working really hard and getting a bonus at the end of the year because I've, done X amount of sales? Or is it that I've managed to keep my job, do well, get a decent performance rating, still see my family, stay in shape? That's if you feel that's success to you, then great.
Yeah.
But success is different for everybody.
That's the thing. I mean, I'm labeled as a lazy entrepreneur, but I think
I feel like you're the one labeling yourself as a lazy entrepreneur. Okay, absolutely.
Yeah, I am. But like, it's very intentional. It's just my framing, my words that I use are not healthy, but whatever you described is what I'm going for, and I want to get better at it. And I actually had that question down on how do you organize yourself and your time, and you kind of sort of answered this new approach that you're doing. But I still wanted to ask is that when you find those slots of work hours after you've done everything, what is your mental framework to identify your priorities within the work? So you've talked to me and we've talked about, is it driving value to the business? Is this useful to the business, whatever you're doing? What kind of frameworks do you have in your mind or exercise that you use to like prioritize? Is
this going to bring me money? Right? This is your work time now, right? And you're an entrepreneur, right? So if you're not doing things that are going to generate revenue for your business, probably not worthwhile. Or delivering a service to a client who's paying for your work, right? So to me, client related work, right, is priority. Whatever they need to get them moving, right? So I'll tell you, when it comes to especially the end of contracts, I mean, I work throughout, but I make sure to go beyond when it comes to renewals, right? Because you want to make sure that you're just going, the last impression they have of you is that you've added so much value. So for me, I take a look at, so I have accountability books with all of my workbooks with all of my clients. And what I do is I make sure before I meet with them the day before that I've been through everything they have to do. So I keep them on track. And to me, that's my priority because I'm their coach, right? So that those types of tasks would take priority, right? Over getting new business, unfortunately, because it's always easier to retain and upsell your current business than it is to get new clients, right? And so, I'm not perfect. Everything is a work in progress. Some days I have it, I'm human. And I just, and I was having that feeling, I want to say earlier this week, there was a block of 3 hours that I had given for work. And I found something online and it just said, I'm just tired. I'm just mentally tired. I played paddle tennis and I went to gym in the morning. And I had breakfast and I was like, oh, I just need a break. And I just I surfed the internet for 3 hours. And I ignored what I had to do. But you know what? I caught it back up in the evening because I knew what it was there. So, and I got my me time just in a different way. Because sometimes the me time is do nothing at all, right? And don't beat yourself up about it. You'll get to the important things when they have to be done, right? And you'll know what's not important. You'll know which meeting. One thing that I would tell entrepreneurs to do, evaluate the length of every meeting that you have, right? Nobody needs an hour of your time always. Right, every week. I don't think people need even 30 minutes of your time. I think most meetings can get done in 15 minutes. But Google makes it so that you default your calendar at 30 minutes.
Mine's at 15.
Right, at 15 minutes, right.
15.
Right? So, and it puts a little pressure to get the stuff done and not too much what we call in the Caribbean old talk. Right? You get on, hey, great, today's the meeting, blah, blah. I know we only have 15 minutes to talk about. So we have to get through X, Y, Z. Let's just jump right in. Right? Because especially in the Middle East, right? I've been here for 10 years. Some companies you go to, you get into a client meeting, they bring you tea. Then they ask about your family, which is part of the culture, and I get it. But then these meetings go on. It is even worse in other countries. The UAE is still okay. I remember being in Kuwait a few years ago. And the ritual for this particular client was to get there and we get tea, then we get dates. Then we get ice cream. He loved ice cream, so he would serve all of his visitors ice cream. So this is like a 3-course meeting before we start discussing the work. Yeah. Right? And you can eat up your day like that. And you know what you're left doing at the end of the day? Struggling and working late to try and make it up. Yeah. Right? So evaluate every meeting that you have. Is it necessary? Can it be solved on email instead? And cut them down. Cut down the length of meetings to 15 minutes. and try it out, right? If even if you have a 30-minute meeting, start and make it 25. Right, and then so you'll realize that you can get it done, and you prep the meeting before. Hey, today on the call we're going to discuss X, Y, and Z. So when they appear on the call, you already have an agenda, and it takes you 30 seconds to write that. So time is your most valuable commodity as an entrepreneur. Use it wisely.
Here. I absolutely agree with that, and again, I can be better at that too. Because maybe I love the sound of my voice too much in the meeting too, but you're absolutely right. Having that bam bam going, I'm laughing now because I'm just remembering how long our last meeting was. What was that? 2 hours and 20 minutes or something.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Exactly. And you can afford yourself to have those kind of meetings with people you enjoy speaking to.
Yeah.
Right? Because you save time, because that gives you more white space in your calendar.
Yeah.
And then you can fill it with great conversations, right?
Yeah.
So, we got along when we met instantly.
Yeah.
And so, we knew we were going to be friends whether or not we were working with each other, right?
Yeah.
So, and it was interesting. Sometimes I really love businesses and I really want to learn about them. And for me, it's not a suck on my time. It's actually educational.
Absolutely.
Right. So I love what I do because every single business is different. And I love, even if I have 2 digital marketing agencies, the way they approach things is going to be different. So I love hearing more and more about it. So when I do go over, it's because I choose to go over.
Yeah. And it's intentional. It's not stolen from you, right? I wanted to ask you, just switching gears a little bit, but you're a coach. Have you been in situations where through coaching a client, something has become apparent to you for your business that you could implement? Or have you gotten advice on the reverse? So the people that you're coaching end up giving you advice that is actually pretty helpful for you. Has that happened yet?
I mean, it's always a two-way process. And the way that when I was even working in the corporate world, as a manager of people, I was always in charge, but I was never a dictator. I got the advice from another manager who told me, why do you ask the opinions of everybody? You're the boss. You tell them what to do, right? Because they'll walk all over you, right? And I take that same approach when I'm coaching. I always start, what do you want to talk about? What do you want to talk about today? Right? I know what I want to talk about. What do you want to talk? What's on your mind? Because I want to at least give them the opportunity to feel at ease and get whatever is off their head and get it off. And then we can focus into the coaching session. Right? So I would say I learn I'm open to learning, and I feel like I learn. I can't probably come up with an example because that's so, it's just the way that I do things. I feel like a two-way process, even though I'm coaching.
It's like almost like osmosis, right? Like just being around other smart business owners, which you pre-qualify, the ones that you want to work with. Just being around them just inspires you probably in ways. So I was curious to see if it's a two-way process or if it's a drag on just your intellectual power, where it's a drain, or does it feed itself too?
Well, you know what? At the beginning, it can be like that when you start working. Listen, coaching is a very emotionally draining process because entrepreneurs have a lot of things on their plate and they're very lonely. And sometimes when you get onto a call, you get a download of all the problems they're having because they just need somebody to talk to, and their spouse is probably not the best person. And so initially you have to get you just have to do that to gain their trust. But then at some point you have to be, as a coach, be kind to yourself and say, okay, well, great. I'm sorry to hear that happened to you. And I'm sorry your daughter is out of control. However, can we get on to let's get on to what we're doing. So, I get better at it, and all of my, I would say 90% of my clients are friends. So I have within the franchise of companies I work with, I have the very fortunate and very lucky and very blessed to have the longest retention of clients, right? My programs go for 6 months at a time. I've never had someone leave early yet, right? And the average time people stay on the exact program taught by someone else is about 2 to 3 months, right? All my clients are in their 5th, 6th, continuing strong, right? I think that's testament to, this kind of two-way dialogue that you have. So they don't feel like, oh, it's so much of a pressure, but they have a support and a shoulder to help them, move along. So I think I learn from my clients all the time. Before we finish, I'll probably come up with a specific example.
That's fine. I want to talk about money next. So pricing in your line of work, my line of work, in most B2B service kind of work, it's majority of the component is a price for an intellectual value, right? There's no widgets that do the exact same thing every time you sell them.
Correct.
What's your philosophy on pricing? How do you view pricing? How do you set pricing? How do you know what the right pricing is before you take it to the market? And obviously the market tells you what the right price is, but how do you figure out for yourself or work backwards from numbers? Like I'm leaving it very open-ended because I just want to understand how has it evolved over time as well, the way you think about pricing and charging the right or fair price for yourself. Is it numbers related? Is it emotions? Is it based on your confidence? What is it?
I think it's a combination of things, right? And when I first started coaching people, obviously it's still the number one, I'd say in the top 3 things that people wonder about. Am I charging the fair value or the right value for my stuff? Am I underselling myself? And I can pretty much know when I speak to someone what their level of skill is in their particular area. Because in my life as an auditor, what I did, my job was to get to the processes and understand who's competent in a particular thing. So I always tell people, initially when you're starting a business, if you figured out, okay, say it depends on where you come from. If you're coming from a job and you say, what is my ideal salary, right? My ideal salary is 50,000 dirhams a month. Just say that's what it is. If you were to create that into an hourly rate, what would that go to, right? And in a particular scope of work, of a service that you're providing, how long does it take you to deliver that? So you multiply out that hourly rate by that, by your ideals, based on your ideal salary, right? So that's an initial way. I think if people want to come up with, they want to, that's my accounting side, right? Yeah. What do you think you're worth? What would you get paid to do this job if you were an employee? Down to an hourly rate multiplied by the number of hours it takes to deliver that scope of work, right? That's a good objective way of looking at things, right? And then as you become more skilled in delivering this particular service, you can deliver it in less time. If it takes you 4 hours to deliver, the more and more you get better, it's going to go down to 3 hours, then it's going to go down to 2 hours. But it doesn't mean you should charge less, all right? It probably means you should charge more, right? Because now you've got all the skill behind you, and then the pricing doesn't become more hourly based, but it becomes project based and it becomes deliverable based, right? So what is the worth of this deliverable in the market? And you start making your profit based on the delta between how long it takes to deliver you and the market price for that, or your price for it. And if you have exceptional and premium results, right, and you can back that up. And I will tell people, don't be afraid to keep raising your prices if you think the value is there and the return is there for the customer. Another way to gauge it is, what's the return on the investment for the customer? I always tell people, so if you spent, 50,000 on my coaching service and that helped you get 250,000 additional dirhams in revenue, would that be worth it for you? Right? 50,000 itself, that's not what I charge, by the way. But
there's a clear ROI connection that you're making for them.
I make the ROI connection, right? So people don't often, they look at it as a cost, but they don't realize a lot of things in expenditure in a business is actually investment, right? So your job as the person selling that is to identify whenever your thing is an investment, right? I mean, even if you were selling cleaning and janitorial services, right? It might seem like a cost, right? But when a customer comes in and they experience your place and it's clean, is that an investment in the customer experience, right? So relate what you're doing to some ROI in the business that's financial or otherwise, or both, and be able to talk to that. Wouldn't it be great if you took this service and X, Y, and Z would happen to your business? Then would it be worth?
Yeah.
Right? So I think, my answer is quite complex, but I think the simplest way is how I told you to do it on the hourly basis, and then start valuing yourself more and measuring how long it takes to deliver it. So you almost feel like, wait a minute, I could deliver the same thing now because I've got templates. I've got, material that I could reuse from one to another. You have to customize, of course, but in the reality of work, and delivering a particular service, probably 75% of it is the same.
Yeah.
Right. And so you build that intellectual property for yourself. That's what intellectual property is all about. It's about using this thing that you've developed to make more money and do it more, multiple times. So yeah, that's my approach to pricing.
Alina and I experimented with a business many, many moons ago, 6 years ago when we first got married. And it was buying used South Indian wedding dresses from women because they only wear them once and never wear them again. So we decided to buy them from our friends for $5 a piece and then set up a boutique to sell it secondhand, because in Canada, people used to wait till someone comes from India or Pakistan to come and shop for that kind of stuff. So if you ask Alina, she'll tell you we broke even on the business. We only did one round. If you ask me, we suffered a big loss. So cash flow, what we paid to get the clothes and what we made from selling the clothes, breaks even. The time I spent in getting that shit off my shelves was innumerate. Like every day after work, coming, dry cleaning stuff, steaming stuff, putting tags on stuff, putting the Facebook ads up, getting people to come in, showing that stuff. So I totally think that getting a handle on your own time, because in the service business, one thing that runs away from you is time, which is a segue to a note that Marwan has shown me that I'm running out of time for my recording. So I do have a last segment I want to do with you. I have marked some things R2 because we're going to have a round 2. There's a lot more stuff we need to get into. Are you up for a rapid fire round with me?
Sure, let's go for it.
I'll try to make it
Is this
fun.
Family Feud style?
Yeah, but you can't give any context. You can just give the answer, one or the other. Some scandalous stuff. No, it's just very normal. It's Dubai friendly. So first one, easy one: ice cream or gelato?
Gelato.
All right. Okay. Second one, exciting flexibility that leads to volatile results, or boring consistency that leads to sure results.
First one always.
Yeah. Nice. Okay, next one is day at the beach or reading with coffee on the couch all day?
Reading with coffee on the couch all day.
Knew it. If you're from the Caribbean, man.
Yeah, I know. Dubai beaches just unfortunately don't stack up to the Caribbean.
It's true. If you weren't living in Dubai or any of the 20 countries that you've lived in, where would you be?
Thailand.
Have you been?
Love it.
Okay, I'm going in October.
Yes.
Take notes. Actually, no, sorry. I'm going to Indonesia. That was my bad.
Thailand or Spain? Those are my 2 favorite countries.
Where in Spain?
Madrid.
Nice. Favorite Netflix show of all time? Not released this year.
Not released this year?
Yeah.
Netflix? God.
Or any TV show. I just use them interchangeably now.
God, of all time.
Of all time, not released this year.
I guess I'd have to say Friends.
All right. It's the one you've rewatched the most?
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
Friends and Family Guy.
Okay, the one book that every business owner should read.
I don't read books.
Wait, my face just went blank.
I don't like reading books. I prefer
Life.
Listening to podcasts and things like that. I read so much as an accountant. You read so much financial statements. You read. To relax, I don't always like reading books.
That makes sense. I have a lot of accounting friends. None of them read.
Yeah.
Because going through a financial statement itself that's
correct.
A lot of reading. Okay, that was a surprise. Okay, if you were to stop working... Oh, by the way, if you do listen to podcasts, there's this amazing one called My First Business. Check it out. It's really cool. It's on Spotify,
Never heard
iTunes.
of it.
Oh, come on. Okay, if you were to stop working as a coach, what would you be doing?
My own business. My own tech business.
Your own tech business? Okay. Would you like to build a big company or a small company?
I like to build a small company that earns a lot of money.
That's been a very consistent answer or behavior, I think, that I'm tracking. It's your number 13. Everyone's kind of gone for that. I think it's the new dream. Like the old dream used to be big, giant, multi-corporation, many countries.
20 people max.
Maybe in space too, but...
Okay. Yeah, 20 people max. That's it.
Cool. Listen, man, I have so much more to discuss in round 2, but before I start closing off, do you have any message for the audience, and the audience being entrepreneurs, new business owners, people running their own businesses? If there is a message you wanted to give to them, or if I found a billboard that every entrepreneur crosses on their way to work, what would you put on there?
I would say advice is everybody thinks of entrepreneurs as these young zennials and millennials that come through because they're the most prominent ones. I want to give a shout out to the slightly older entrepreneurs out there who are frustrated with their jobs, who feel that they've been committed to a career and they can't start because they've got, commitments and they're in their 30s and 40s. I started my first business in, at 41, right? And I think that having been an employee for so many years and had a variety of experiences, it's what made me mature enough to be able to run a business, right? Because one thing a lot of entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs don't have is maturity, right? And that really affects the business. So I would say don't feel like you're too old to ever start a business. Anybody can do it. I would say don't hire too quickly, right? Don't feel like you need to surround yourself with staff because you're a business owner, right? Outsource as much as you can before you take on the responsibility of hiring people. Don't spend money on a lot of expensive marketing agencies at first, because it can suck your money if you don't know where it's going. I would say live below your means, even in business, right? I still drive a rental car, right? I can afford to not drive a rental car. And I was having a chat with my friend this week, and I said, I don't even think I need my car because I work mostly from home and virtually, right? So as I've gotten older, I've become more, I wouldn't say frugal necessarily, but yeah, maybe a little frugal, right? So
without
frugality,
the negative connotation.
Yeah. Frugal in terms of, you don't feel like you need to impress anybody, right? Keep your money for things that really matter. And having a fancy car, unless you're a massive car enthusiast, to impress people who you drive around to is not where it's at, right? So have fun in everything that you do. Make sure it's fun. If it's not fun and making you laugh and you're not having a good time every day, that's not the right business for you, right? If you don't get up, and you're not going to get up every morning and think, oh, I love this business, because sometimes you get up and say, why am I doing this? But if you'd rather be doing this than working for a job, then you're in the right profession, right? Even if it doesn't have the money, and the money will come. Don't be obsessed with hitting your money goals from the get-go. Keep doing what you love, live within your means so you can support yourself, but the money will come. Yeah. And sales is the most important part of your business.
I was waiting for that.
Sales is do not ignore sales. Somebody told me yesterday, I don't have time for sales because I'm figuring out my marketing first, right? Is the marketing not bringing you the money? Oh, I have to build up my operations. I have to set up my IT system. I'm like, no, none of that makes you money. Make money first, then you can invest in the rest of the business. So don't keep your eye on sales, and get support.
Here. I love all of those.
Don't be weak. Asking for help and support doesn't make you weak.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. There's so many, I've taken copious amounts of notes, but more to come in round 2. I wanted to talk to you about thinking big. I wanted to talk to you about job descriptions, jam on that. I'm going to bring you back here because there's other businesses that we've talked offline beforehand that you're looking to get off the ground or participating into. We didn't even get to those. And the differences in pivoting, and what you're learning as a cross-learning to your businesses. There's so much. Mm-hmm. So you have to come back.
This should be a series.
This should be. We should do a whole episode on Chad.
Oh my God.
Living in Chad. But thanks so much for coming out, man. I really enjoyed this. There's a lot of learning, a lot to chew on. Typically what we do is Alina and I sit down and discuss every single point that a guest said and see what we can make of it. So
wow. All right. I don't know how I feel about that, but anyway, I'll get the summary from you guys.
You will. Well,
thank you for having me. It's been an honor.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Marwan, for the excellent curation in the background. I didn't feel too hot with all of these lights on. It's officially my first proper podcast setup.
Yeah.
Done. Yeah, because I've done a podcast on Zoom before, but this is the real deal.
This is a real deal.
I
don't mess around.
No, this is legit. This could be on TV.
Legit.
Yeah. All right. Great. Thank you so much,
man.
guys.
Thanks, buddy.